Radialpoint helps large consumer technology brands, primarily carriers, OEMs, and retailers, to build out technology services for consumers. So we have a B2B2C model. So we sell a SaaS platform to businesses which they configure to offer technology services to their consumers, including remote support, in-home support, in-store support, and related services. We've just passed around $1 billion generated for our customers in top-line revenues born out of these services. So great milestone for the business. So, historically speaking, large consumer technology brands have sold and supported their stuff. And there was never really a motivation to do anything other than that, given the significant support-related costs of out-of-scope calls and supporting things which you didn't sell. And so, largely speaking, the entire in-scope technology support industry was built out of a culture around cost containment, cost deflection, cost avoidance, which derived a culture of things like average handle times and first call resolution and get customers off the phone. Today, however, their stuff connects and talks to everybody else's stuff. And so this has caused a fundamental rethink of what the word support means and what technology services for consumers are all about. And by support, really support lends itself to the entire technology lifecycle. It's not just technical support. Unfortunately, the terms are used synonymously by many people, but it's really about the entire end-to-end lifecycle, from purchase all the way to disposal or recycling. So this need to rethink support has spawned a multi-billion-dollar industry in consumer technology services. Each of these, certainly in North America, I apologize to our European colleagues for not having similar data for Europe, but certainly in North America, each of these is a multi-billion-dollar market today in terms of consumer spend. There's varying degrees of margin across these different services. But for the most part, some are more mature, some are more nascent, but you're seeing a lot of innovation and disruption in this space. Companies like SquareTrade, which are trying to disrupt the warranty business, and one of the, Bain, who's an STL partner here, Bain Capital, put almost $240 million into SquareTrade this year. There's disruptors in terms of on-site labor, companies like OnForce and WorkMarket, which are trying to lend a variable nature to IT labor. So there's a lot of innovation and disruption going on in the space, and this is a family of services that is growing. Many of these brands, these large technology brands, find it difficult to enter this space and broaden the kinds of services they offer consumers to help them get more out of their technology. There's a lot of reasons. These are some of them. Certainly, if you've sold a product historically, it's hard. It can be difficult to jump into a services business. It's very different, perhaps, from your core business. You may have a number of these services in market today, but there may not be any fluidity amongst them. So the consumer may not have a single path or a single place to go across those services we saw on the previous slide. They're likely very disjointed experiences for the consumer. Likewise, for these brands, they may have entirely different views of consumers, whether they come in off the website, whether they walk into a store, whether they call on the phone and they need help. Those may all be individual looks for the company, for the brands, and they may want to solve that as well. So a lot of these large brands are at pain to broaden their technology services portfolios today. That being said, nearly every major consumer technology brand is doing something in terms of helping consumers get more out of technology outside of just the technology that they sell. This slide could easily be 3 or 4 times longer than it is, but I ran out of space to paste these logos. So you see here on the left, you have a number of companies across different verticals. They're vertical more or less in the middle, and on the right is sort of the brand of the form of technology services that they've launched. And there's a ton of variance on this slide. A lot of these programs are technical support versus technology lifecycle support. Some of them are extremely strategic. Others are not strategic or less strategic. They may just be check marks or things I feel I have. Some were launched specifically because out of scope support calls just grew unmanageable, untenable. Others are doing it for net new revenues, services margin. There's a lot of motivations here. Perhaps the largest program on this slide is no surprise, it's Geek Squad, which in 2012 will more or less do $4 billion in revenue. Some people are very surprised by that number. That is roughly 6.5% to 7% of Best Buy's total revenue, but it's over 25% of their profit. So that is quite an interesting business that's been around now for roughly 10 years and continues to grow in interesting ways. These are some of the motivations that are fueling these programs. They vary. Companies may launch for all these reasons or just one or two, but a lot of different forces are converging, causing these large brands to rethink what it means to help consumers when they call with a question about their product or service. Some of the big takeaways from this: if you sell a technology product or service or device, you are in the services business. We feel quite strongly about that, whether you recognize that or not. You're very much in the services business, and you need to think about what that means to your customers. And when they call and they have questions about a device that talks to your device, connects to your device, plugs into your device, what is going to be your position? Are you going to help them with that problem? Are you going to focus more on what you sell and steer them elsewhere? There's a rethink here about what that means. The day that Geek Squad launched, that was an immediate over-the-top threat, certainly to carriers, but to many other companies. Here was someone in your customer's house, building relationships of trust, presumably fixing a problem, and being in a great position to recommend services, devices, products, etc. to those consumers. And that's a real threat, or could be a real threat to your business. So just as a takeaway, if you always end with humor, always end with a joke. I think if you're in this business, you really need to think about what technology services mean to you and your brand, because your competitors certainly are thinking about that. Thank you. Good stuff.